Okay, welcome to lesson 11.7, and this lesson is about reflections and rotations. Now you're going to need your math folder or math notebook to make your notes and for this lesson. So far you've learned how to recognize translations, and we talked about translations being a slide. And today we're going to move on to practicing recognizing reflections and rotations. So let's do some examples of reflections and rotations. And I think a lot of this is going to look familiar to you. So a reflection is basically the same thing as a flip. You've probably heard about it as a flip in the past. So a reflection and a flip are kind of the same thing. So let's make an example of that. We're going to use our straight edge and draw an x-axis, and then we're going to also draw a y-axis. And we're just kind of sketch a triangle, if you will, that moves like this, and then we'll kind of make it a little bit slanted there. And then we're going to create a reflection of this triangle, and it's going to reflect, the line of reflection is going to be the x-axis. So we're going to, again, about the same distance away from the x-axis, we're going to flip this triangle. So there's our line. We're going to try to make this as congruent as possible. And then we're going to make a kind of a slanted line here to reflect the side, and then connect the third side. And again, we want to make it as congruent as possible, but this is an example of a reflection, and it reflects on the x-axis. So it reflects across the x-axis. Okay, so that's an example of reflection, and I'm sure that looks probably familiar to you. And then we're going to do an example of a rotation. Another example of a rotation is a turn. So, and again, this is probably something you've seen before. So a turn, and we do our turns through we do a turn through the center of rotation. There's kind of a center point, and we also do a turn at a certain angle. So it takes place at a certain angle. And now let's do an example of this. Let's take our straight edge and create our x and y axes. And here we go with the x, and here is the y. And let's do just a really simple drawing of a letter L. Letter L, capital letter L. And we're going to rotate it. So I'm going to kind of make my line it's kind of right there. That's where I want to aim to. So I'm going to rotate it, and this is our point of center of rotation. So it's going to rotate, but we're going to rotate this at 90 degrees. So now let's turn it, and we're going to draw our oopsie daisy. Kind of make it again as congruent as we can. And so this is going to be our example of a rotation, and this rotates at 90 degrees. So from this point to this point, it rotates 90 degrees. So that's an example of a rotation. That's pretty simple. And then we also have an example of, let's say if you rotated it, this same example, but you rotated it 180 degrees. So again, we would take and go this direction, and this would be an example of it. This would be the 90-degree rotation, and if we rotated it 180 degrees, it would look like this. I think I made that a little bit too big. I think you get the idea. So there's an example of, this would be a rotation of 180 degrees. So again, a couple different examples of rotation. And one more example of a flip. Showing another example of a flip, we have the, let's say we'll take that same letter L and make an example of a flip. So again, this is our x-axis and this is our y-axis. And so let's say we have our letter L, and we're going to make an upside down letter L. So an example of a flip is that basically it's going to flip opposite, this is going to flip along the x-axis, so it's going to flip across the x-axis. And there's again an example of a flip. Now if it would go in this direction, let's say our flip would take place in this direction, it would be an example of a flip along the y-axis. So if it went this direction, it would be the flip would take place, or we're going to use the correct word, I'm sorry, the reflection is on the y-axis, and in this case this is a reflection along the x-axis. So it gives you some different examples. Alright, our lesson for reflections and rotations is going to be on page 569. So page 569, and you'll get that when you come back to class.